About 2 weeks until Selection Day. Welcome into College Football Live, the usual cast of characters on a Friday. He's Desmond Howard and Stanford Steve, the Authority Pete Thamel, and I am Jen Latta. Could be a lot of movement in the playoff picture over the next 24 hours or so. So let's get right to the big game taking place here. It is, of course, USC visiting Oregon. And USC comes in with just that one Big Ten loss, a chance at its biggest win of the season against Oregon. We know that they can score. How does the defense hold up against Oregon on Saturday? On the other side, the Ducks cannot afford a stumble either. A second loss would make the road to the playoff much tougher, and they've still got Washington ahead. Players on both sides of the ball understand the stakes of this matchup.
It's going to be a fired-up environment. It's what. When you dream as a little kid, is what you dream for at moments like these.
There's a lot at stake, but that's what you play for. It's what football in November is all about. That's why you come to the University of Oregon for games like this.
Everything's at stake. It's a big game. It's towards the end of the season, so we got to go in there and play SC brand football.
There's a lot of playmakers all over the ball, whether it's in the backfield or up front. So they're a really well-coached unit, so it'll be a good test for us.
I'd argue that we're the most physical team in the Big Ten, if not in the nation.
I'm super excited for this opportunity, honestly.
All right, look, there is no doubt that both of these teams recognize the magnitude of this matchup when it comes to their playoff opportunities. So, Des, I will start with you on this one. Yeah. How can Oregon avoid the upset and stay on track?
Well, Jen, you said we're back. So we were here before. It was the Indiana game. We're trying to figure out this Hoosiers team. Like last year, they were in the playoff, but are they really legit this year? Then they came here and they dominated the trenches. They controlled the line of scrimmage, especially defensively. So if the Oregon Ducks are going to pull off this victory, it starts up front. Don't forget, Dante Moore, their young quarterback. This guy, I think he threw for maybe less than 190, 2 interceptions. He was harassed all afternoon by the Hoosiers defense. So I think if they're going to come away with the victory, it starts up front. The offensive line, they got to establish a line of scrimmage. They're going to have to run the ball, but they're going to have to protect Dante Moore better than they did when they played Indiana.
Well, and they're going to have to utilize the tight ends, Des. You saw Kenyon Sadiq there earlier. He has 6 touchdown catches at the tight end position. There's some uncertainty around the receiver position at Oregon for Dante Moore's targets because they've been banged up there. But with Kenyon Sadiq and Jamari Johnson, and I'll leave this to our tight end aficionado, Stanford Steve, I would say they have maybe the best pairing of tight ends in the country in terms of downfield weapons. Sadiq averages 13.6 yards a catch. Johnson averages 13.3 yards per catch. They are lethal at that position. Look for a lot of 12 on Saturday.
Yeah, I look at Oregon's pass defense. When I'm going through the numbers, you see they only allow 50% completion percentage, right? So then I start looking at the opponents. The opponents are Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. Not the biggest pass offenses you think of when you think about throwing the football.
That's right.
But that's what it comes down to. Autzen can be a hostile place, but this, to your point, Indiana dominated that game from the beginning. The crowd was never really a part of it. And when you look at Indiana, who was ranked 43rd in pass offense, they gave Mendoza time. Oregon couldn't get pressure, and that's why the crowd was not a factor in the game. Oregon's got to get pressure.
Well, you're absolutely right about it being the line of scrimmage, and the offensive line for Oregon did not do them any favors when they played Indiana. There was a season-high 6 sacks, but since then, in the 4 games, just 5. So that, is what Dan Lanning said today on the Pat McAfee Show. This is not the same team that you saw against Indiana, and of course, Oregon fans are hoping that is the case. We move on here on College Football Live. Let's get to our next action. Time for our Goodyear proven performance. USC has been great on offense this season, leading the Big Ten in total offense and in yards per play. The Trojans have also been getting it done in the red zone, 35 touchdowns on 50 red zone drives. Des, why don't you tell us more about one of the key playmakers for the USC offense?
Yeah, guy. Wide receiver Mekhi Lemon, one of my favorite players to watch in all of college football. The young man averages over 109 yards a game and 15 yards per catch. Now, this young man, number 6, is the straw that stirs the matcha for the Trojans offense. Here he is right here in the slot. This is against Illinois. This is in the 4th quarter. They really needed a big play to kind of ice the game. He's one-on-one the nickel back. They go nickel against the nickel. He's going to throw him a little fade route. Now watch him right here. The defensive back is grabbing his right shoulder. Mekhi fights through that and makes an amazing catch for a touchdown. Watch it again. In the process, I think he kind of broke my man's arm, too.
Look how he fights through the contact, makes an amazing catch. That's what he brings to the offense. They're going to move him around, too. It's going to be really hard for them to try to locate number 6. Now, he is in the slot. He's a route technician. Watch how he's on the hash mark. He's going up, and at the top of the route, he stems to affect the defensive back's technique, but then he comes back to the ball. Now, guys, he's a yak monster. Yards after contact, and then yards after catch. And that's why he averages over 15 yards per catch. And Lincoln Riley moves him all around the offense. It's going to be hard to locate him. They just want to get the ball in the number 6's hands. I'm talking to defensive coaches for Oregon. They said, listen, number 6 is the problem. They got to see if they can come up with the answer tomorrow afternoon.
Des, good stuff as always. And speaking of USC, I was at USC earlier this week. Got a chance to sit down with Lincoln Riley. That conversation comes your way Saturday morning on College Game Day. And speaking of head coaches, Pete, what is some of the other news circulating in the college coaching sphere?
Well, the biggest story in college football right now, Jen, involves a former USC coach, Lane Kiffin. He's the head coach at Ole Miss. And Ole Miss made an announcement today that they will not be making an announcement on the future of Lane Kiffin until after the Egg Bowl, which is next Friday. Keith Carter, the athletic director at Ole Miss, issued a statement today, and he said that they're focused on beating Mississippi State in Starkville next week, and nothing will come about with Kiffin until the day following that game. So the watch continues. There will be no watch at Baylor for the future of Dave Aranda. Linda Livingstone, the Baylor president, released a statement today saying Aranda will be back as Baylor's coach next year. Part of this has to do with the uncertainty at Baylor because Mack Rhodes, the athletic director there, stepped down. Aranda's 5-5 this year, 36-35 overall. Livingstone made it clear they need more wins. As for James Franklin, he's set up for wins. They released his contract today at Virginia Tech. The most interesting nugget in all that, Jen, was his staff salary pool at Tech is going to be $15.5 million. That's just behind Clemson at the top of the ACC. That's more than $7 million more than Tech paid for last season for their staff.
That Franklin hire leaves 8 head coaching openings among the Power 4 teams. In total, 13 FBS head coaching jobs will open up this season. That's the most in a single season since 2021 when there were 14 openings. So now there is 1 hire down, but still many more to go. Pete, what do you expect to be the next domino in the shuffle?
Only 8 openings. Sounds like a fun Thanksgiving. I think the next domino is going to come from the second-tier jobs that are all jostling around right now. Think Arkansas, Oklahoma State, UCLA. One name that's interwoven in all of those jobs is Eric Morris. He's the head coach at North Texas, which has viable college football playoff potential, by the way. Drew Mestemaker, the quarterback there, is likely to go with Morris wherever he does end up going. Look for him to end up at one of those jobs, and look for some clarity on that, Jen, in the upcoming days after we get through this weekend's games.
I just have to go back to Ole Miss because now
You got to.
I mean, you have to because I'm trying to read between the lines.
Right.
You got a week, and either Keith Carter, the AD, is doing nothing and just writing a new contract for Lane, or he's interviewing a ton of new names because he's going to need a new head coach.
Yeah, it's wild because I thought that I heard, I'm not sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, that they were going to give him an ultimatum like this week. That was the rumor out there. So it's like they were trying to put pressure on Lane. I don't know, maybe they met and they had a change of heart. Say, hey, okay, Lane, we're good. How about after the Egg Bowl, we reconvene and we have this conversation again?
So there was no actual ultimatum. Lane went on the Pat McAfee show this week, denied that. And look, an ultimatum's not a great way. Like, you don't give ultimatums to your spouse, right? It's not a good method of courtship in that. But Ole Miss wants some clarity, like Steve said. If he's going to leave, they have a signing class to take care of. They have a coaching job to fill. Like, these rosters are so fluid, and Ole Miss has been a step ahead of everybody in NIL and spending and roster management. They don't want to step behind. So it's a fascinating scenario that will continue.
And the total buyout for 11 coaches this year who were fired during the season, guys, just a cool $183.5 million. Wow. Who says there's no money? Wow. Still to come on College Football Live. All right, another key matchup in the playoff race. Number 8, Oklahoma, hosting number 22, Missouri. I almost said Mizzou, and then I said Missouri, and I jammed them together after last week's huge win over Alabama. The Sooners' top 5 rushing defense could face a massive test against Ahmad Hardy, who has piled up over 1,300 yards this season, as Oklahoma looks to earn back-to-back top 25 wins and strengthen their spot in the bracket. How does Oklahoma keep the momentum going, Pete?
Well, I think we start with Missouri here, Jen. Bo Pribula will be returning to the starting quarterback job. I know Steve and Des were on the field in Nashville when his ankle was facing the wrong direction. It was a dislocated ankle, but there was no fracture. And because there wasn't a fracture, he really has only missed 2 full games. He obviously went out in that Vanderbilt game. So they had a fast Friday practice at Missouri today, and sources told me that Pribula looked good. This was the last threshold for him to clear. He's been medically cleared to return for the Missouri Tigers, and he is going to be back in that starting job after missing just 2 games.
Really impressive. Des, what about you?
Man, talking about this Oklahoma defense, I was impressed the way that they stopped the run last week against Alabama, but they were like taking advantage of in the passing game. But going against Missouri, obviously with Hardy at the running back position, one of the best in the nation, I think they're going to be okay. And one thing that they really did, guys, like statistically, they weren't the Oklahoma defense that we thought they were going to be. But what they did is they made impact plays at opportune moments to change that game against Alabama. So, you know, championship caliber defenses, that's what they do. Even if they're getting gashed during a game, they're going to come up with a big stop or a big turnover to turn the tide of the game. And that's what they did last week. I think they're going to load up the box and make sure that even though Pribula is back, is he going to be 70%? Is he going to be 80%? Like you said, bro, we saw that ankle turn the opposite direction. So he's coming back from what looked like a horrific injury at that time. And don't forget, he's a dual-threat quarterback. Is he going to be able to run? Exactly.
That's a huge question because against that defense, you got to be 100%. I'm just wondering about Missouri's offense here. Hardy against the 2 best run defenses they faced, only 58 yards against Auburn, 52 against Alabama. And to your point, that Oklahoma defense, they're so active. You know, they blitzed Ty Simpson on over half of his dropbacks in the second half last week. Forced turnovers. In the last 2 road wins, they forced 6 turnovers. And most importantly, when you have a struggling offense, they turn that into 30 points. So it's cut out for Missouri on the road. I expect Oklahoma's defense to dominate again.
It has been a minute since Missouri won at Oklahoma in Norman. 1966, the last time. So they'd certainly like to change that history. Let's take a look at our Heisman update. It's presented by Nissan. Haynes King is gaining momentum in the Heisman race, guys. He now has 3 straight games with 300 passing yards and 50 rushing yards. That's tied with Lamar Jackson back in 2017 for the 2nd longest streak by an ACC quarterback over the last 20 seasons. He has also completed 70% of his passes in each of those last 3 games. King and Georgia Tech are taking on Pitt at home this week. Des, what will you be focused on in this game?
I tell you what, you're looking at Pitt. We were there last week. They played Notre Dame, and man, Mason Heinschel, you know, he was having a hell of a season with 5-game winning streak, and then Notre Dame happened, and the Fighting Irish said, "Hey, buddy, there's levels to this," and they struggled. And then obviously Desmond Reed, he went out to his most dynamic, explosive player. So going up against this Georgia Tech team, I think is it's going to be a tough sledding for the Pitt Panthers, guys.
Well, I'm taking a look, guys, at Miami at Virginia Tech. There'll be some high school recruits visiting James Franklin to start his era. The most important thing for me in this game is how Miami looks. They not only have to win, but they have to win with style points. They're creeping up those college football playoff rankings. They're sitting there at 13. Will we end up with the head-to-head debate with them and Notre Dame? They're getting close to that right now. They need to win and win with alacrity in order to impress that CFP committee.
Yeah, that defense has to travel for Miami, Pete. I'm going to look at SMU. Louisville heads down there. And SMU, they really got to be kicking themselves for that Wake Forest loss.
Absolutely.
I mean, they would be right in the middle of this thing with controlling their own destiny. It comes down to